Hello. Today's question is actually a pretty common question again from many of my clients who have employees or several employees. And the question is, how do you really get people to start owning the store a lot more? And owning the store, for those of you who not familiar with that term, means they have a level of ownership in the business, even though they don't own the business financially. Mentally, emotionally, they come into the workplace as if they are owning the company. They act as if they do, which is not about being boastful necessarily, but means that they perform like a business owner. They work hard, they are accountable, and they produce results. So I want to share a little bit about that, and just one distinction, because it is obviously a fairly complicated process, but I'm going to try and break it down in all these videos that I produce. So one distinction is the distinction of accountability. Many employees have accountability like a role, like if they are playing a role. For example, if they're the manager, then they have certain clear things that they are in charge of. So it's being in charge of something is how they look at accountability. So if they're in charge of payroll, then that's what they're accountable for. If they're a doctor, they're in charge of the patient's health. If they are a nurse, they're in charge of certain specific duties. So you could say that they look at it in terms of duties or roles, which is not a bad way to look at it but really it limits the thinking and as well as the performance measurements, and it limits quite a lot of other things as well. So you can imagine, because if you only think in terms of your role, then you're not going to go above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that the company is successful. You're only going to do your job. Now, there are going to be some people like that, and they may fit in very well in a company as long as they do what they're asked to do. But if it requires more stuff, then it becomes a real problem. So that's one way of looking at accountability. However, it's a very limited form of accountability. What I advocate is accountability measured in terms of reliability, specifically measured in terms of how well they manage and keep their promises. So there are two things that I say: manage and keep their promises. Obviously, you want to have people who keep their promises, but not everybody's going to keep their promises all the time because of the nature of unpredictable events and changes in the business, etc. Some promises may not make sense. But it's important to be able to manage your promises. So, two things again: being able to keep and manage your promise. What do I mean by that? If they make a promise, in whatever domain they're in, and it could be not just one role, it could be many roles that they play, but really they make a promise regardless of whatever role they play. What percentage of the time do they keep their promises? And how well do they manage their promise? So, in other words, if they know they can't keep the promise, how often or how reliable are they in terms of coming to you and letting you know that that promise is not going to happen? So one of the primary complaints I get from employers and business owners is that the people that they hire don't stay in communication with them. They feel like the employees feel like they don't have to be in communication if there's nothing to report. But that could be a very dangerous situation for an employer or a business owner, because sometimes you need to know if things are not happening, as much as you need to know when things are happening. So if they are not going to produce the outcome, you need to know, and you need to know soon. So it becomes more important for the employee not to so much manage their role, which is important, I grant that. However, it's more important that they be able to keep their promises and be able to communicate with you, that is, manage their promises. If they feel or see that they cannot keep their promises, make a new one and keep you in the loop, right? So it's more important, I feel, to manage promises with employees rather than roles. So I hope that makes sense and at least starts elucidating more of how you can train your employees to own the store more. Now, I know there's way more that's required to know about this, but I want you to just start thinking about that if you're a business owner or a manager, that you want to start thinking more in terms of promises being kept rather than roles or duties. I hope that elucidates something for you, and I hope that spurs you on to watch the other videos so you get more clarity. Look forward to serving you in the future.